Hello.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I am well. My name's Nick, by the way. I'm Nick with Temple of Geek.
Nice to meet you. Big fan of the site.
Oh, perfect. We do everything geek, so this movie is right up our alley. So you are the writer and director of Tim Travers and the Traveling Paradox.
Tim
Um,
Travers and the Time Traveler's
Time
Paradox.
travel.
Yeah, believe me, you're not the first or the last.
What's funny is I say it right in my brain, and then when the words come out. So first off, what inspired you to come up with this concept?
I hate to admit it, but the best art is art that's in conversation with other art. So I saw a time travel movie at an independent film festival, and I just got to say, I hated it. Like, I just hated everything about it. Wish the filmmaker's the best, though. And it just got me thinking about what I would want to do with that sort of subject matter. We've all seen a million time travel movies over the years, but I don't think I've ever seen one that really digs into the actual science and treats the science as something that is in and of itself interesting. So my thought was, could I do this? And could I also make it really funny?
I've always been intrigued with time travel and time travel stories. When it came to the science itself with this, how much did you have to study and explore versus what you already knew?
Well, initially, it was fairly well researched because the film started as a short film. So all the time travel elements brought up in the short film are based on real theories. And spoilers, all the theories are for why time travel doesn't work. But, the science behind why it doesn't work is really interesting. And so
Mhm.
the short really focused on that. The feature uses that as a jumping off point, which and does, by the time we get to the end, descend into utter madness. But even the utter madness is still rooted in real ideas. So a lot of it's stuff that you've come across, like hollow universes, grandfather's paradox, black holes. So a lot of stuff is things like that, which we then tried to add extra elements to of real, just to make it more fun and engaging. And also to give little Easter eggs for the people who know.
Could you, for the layman, kind of describe what the time traveler's paradox entails?
Yes, it is a thought experiment going back ages. Sometimes it's called the time traveler's paradox, sometimes it's called the grandfather's paradox. But put simply, it's when you go back in time and kill your younger self, or you kill your grandfather, so your grandfather can't have you as a kid. So, because if you go back in time and kill your younger self, you would therefore not exist. But if you didn't exist, you would not have been able to go back in time and kill your younger self. Therefore, you must exist. It's a paradox because it's two directly conflicting pieces of information that do not work together. The one absolutely makes the other impossible, thereby making both impossible, which is the paradox.
So you had a character who basically goes through this over and over again and keeps reproducing variants of himself as we go
Yes.
along. But of course, each of these has a different experience and has a different story to tell with that. First off, how did you keep track of all these characters and where you wanted to go with them?
In the writing process, it was actually very straightforward. I just treated them as different characters. Like, yes, they all have Tim, but there's Alpha Tim, Gamma Tim, Zeta Tim. Just like you would with any other screenwriting project, these are different people. Now, conveniently, they're incredibly similar people. In fact, they're all the same guy, separated by maybe a few hours of difference in experience. But on the page, they're just different characters. And so that made it, it's just like keeping track of any large cast. The bigger complications were when we were on set, because poor Samuel Dunning, our lead actor, he is jumping between a dozen different characters, and we're shooting so quickly, we rarely have time to keep track of which is which while we're filming it. So we leaned incredibly hard on our wonderful script supervisor, working closely with me and Sam to always kind of keep track of who is who. But the joke in the film of the name tags they all wear, that was born of a real life need on set to keep track of who was who.
So that wasn't even in the script. That was
There's no
something that
name tags
happened.
meant to, that is 100% something we came up with as we were getting into production of, oh, we need this.
I mean, as a viewer, that was extremely helpful because you look at the name tag and you're able to kind of jump into back into that person's story as you follow them along. How
Also
did
helpful on set.
how did Sam cope with all of these different variations of the same character?
Beats the hell out of me. I'm surprised his brain didn't melt. Mine sure did. I think he and I just had a very ongoing system of trust. Like he always tells the story, but on set, he'd frequently, if we're doing a large group shot, he'd be like, "Hey, wait, am I the dumb one or the mean one? You're the mean one. Okay, thank you." And just dive in.
Yeah, I mean that makes it simple. And of course, like the poster and everything is about finding himself. So there's a lot of like character human study with behind all of this. Can you talk about how you went about that, or what you had in mind when approaching these?
Well, it came from an interesting place. In the short film, there was no character arc. That was kind of the point of the short film. But when I decided to make it into a feature, the first question you have to ask is not, do you want to make a movie? It's, do you have something worth saying if you're going to make a movie? The art must come before just the desire to make something. And I knew I wanted to make a movie of the short because I had liked how the short came together so well. But I did have to sit down and ask myself, what did I want to say with this? And I remember I called up Sam to kind of get his take, because at this point, we'd already been to a lot of festivals. We'd seen how people had reacted to the character in the short film. And it became very quickly apparent to both of us that what a story like this needs to be if you're going to make a character this mean, this sometimes straight up murderous, it needs to be about self-acceptance and learning to love yourself. And given that there's a lot of him on screen, we can take that idea to a really extreme place. And once we settled in on that, the rest came together very quickly. Once we realized this is a story about, not a story of redemption, but a story of someone learning to accept themselves as they are, all the rest of the pieces fell into place.
So with that kind of story aspect, and then of course you've got both the violence and the comedy. How did you go about balancing all of those elements in storytelling?
The thing with comedy is its instinct. It's just following my own instinct. What makes me laugh? I'd already had the advantage of seeing what really worked well in the short, so I knew we were going to keep the structure of the short, but expand it out. And what's all the elements that make me laugh? I mean, that's the real truth with the humor on it. And also, I think there's really no such thing as too much humor. I really like the film to be as front-loaded and full of laughs as possible. So by the time we're getting to the more emotionally real stuff at the end of the film, I wanted to sneak up on the audience a little bit. My hope is, other than the statement, learning to love yourself, that the audience won't see where we're going. That by the time the moral arrives, it'll be something that really makes sense in hindsight, but it'll be something that they found their way to the same way the character did. So for me, it's all about really just earning that late game seriousness with the humor you can put in, but keeping the humor grounded and real. As far as balance goes, it's like music. It's just you read through it. Does it make you laugh? You film it. Are you laughing? Are you feeling emotionally engaged? Are you feeling what you want your audience to be feeling when you're on set? And then as you finally get into the edit, just trying not to be too precious with things and letting the edit do what it needs to do.
As a writer and director, how much did you stick to the script when filming versus allowing like the name tags and everything else, allowing things to unfold as you're filming?
I have never prescribed to the school that a script is a holy document. The themes of the script are a holy document. The production needs of a script are a holy document. The word-to-word lines are not. It's about what makes the story work. And the script is only the template for the feature. And then the feature is only the template for the edit. So each thing must be allowed to expand. As far as I'm concerned, for example, once we get to the edit, the script is dead. I don't even want to see the script at that point. The footage is the pieces I now have to work with.
And you also played a character in this movie.
Yes, I did.
How was that for you to both write, direct, and be in the movie?
I have no idea. We had so much stuff going on that anytime the camera rolled and I was in front of it, I blacked out. I like how it turned out. Watching the film now, I like my character, which is amazing because typically I hate seeing myself on screen. But just this was so much high energy work on set that anytime the camera rolled, I truly could not tell you what I was thinking moment to moment, with the exception of the outdoor scenes with Danny Trejo, because that was in 1-degree weather. And I remember thinking, I'm cold. I'm really, really, really cold.
That's extreme weather. How many days did you have to film this?
Oh my God. I am very proud of this, but we did the entire main shoot in 17 days.
That's amazing.
Yeah, with
That's
4 days of
impressive.
pickups, and the pickups did not involve a single one of the main actors. It was just body doubles.
And you had, I mean, you had an all-star cast in this. I mean, Danny Trejo, Keith
Oh
David,
yeah.
Felicia Day. First off, well done in getting all of them in the film. But what was it like to work with kind of these, I guess, legends?
Remarkably low key. Part of what makes these people legends is that they're professionals. There's no weird drama. I mean, other than the sort of back of your head knowledge that, oh, this is a famous person, they don't behave or act any differently from anybody else on set. They're just low key, easy to work with folks who bring their A game. And the moment they switch into acting mode, they're there. I think the most I personally got starstruck was Joel McHale, because I actually did background on Community back in the day as
Oh,
one of my
interesting.
first jobs.
Yeah.
Yep. You can see me in the background of a few episodes of that incredibly. So Joel was someone who could have had me fired with a look a decade ago. So that was probably the closest I came to getting personally really starstruck.
Well, first of all, what seasons can we find you in those?
I am
Curious.
in season 3, but there's only one episode that you can really clearly see me, and that's the gay bash of season 3. They brought to this day, I'm convinced it was a casting mistake. They brought in all these stunningly handsome, ripped, muscular young men to be like go-go dancing on stage, and off to the side, me looking like the Crypt Keeper, because I was at my lowest body weight, I was underweight at the time. It's kind of a miracle I didn't end up in the hospital. My health is so crappy at the time. So you just got these beautiful young men with the rippling pectorals, and me just off to the side like this going,
Hey, sometimes you need that for balance, right? You need to, yeah,
I
have that
remain
offset.
absolutely convinced that it was a casting mistake.
But I mean, they went with it, so no fault there. As far as storytelling and as far as the writing, when it comes to that, were there any when you were writing things? Were there any surprises for you as you were writing, especially adding character development into the film versus the short?
Not really. The writing had to go so fast on this. There was some behind the scenes drama where another production got canceled. So the writing process of this script was 30 days.
Oh, dang.
And then another 60 days to polish it. But we were already in pre-production by the time I even started polishing. So a lot of it, the biggest surprises were the tools I would find to work with. I think of Tim Travers as a spare parts movie, in the sense that a lot of our sets, locations, even characters in a few cases, were put together based on what was available to me. I had a radio station set from another production, so there was going to be a radio station. I had this huge destroyed outdoor aluminum factory complex, so that's where the outdoors were going to be. And that was decided before I'd even started writing. The writing was being built around the assets I had available to me and trying to maximize them as much as possible. So to me, I guess the biggest surprise is that it actually gelled so well. Exactly one location that was not preset that we had to hunt down, and that was the bar.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Every other location of the film is something I already had access to and built the script around that.
As far as the time traveling structure, because time travel throughout the years, there's so many iconic time traveling devices or things that happened. When it came to the design of the time traveling device, what went into that, or what thought or inspiration?
None. In the script, it's just a door frame. In one side, you walk out the other. Maybe there's a little bit of hallway in between. But our phenomenal set designer and production designer, Vincent DeFelix, he sent me about 20 sketches of different ideas because he knew he had to build the time machine. And this goes all the way back to the short. And all of these sketches were so interesting and cool. And on the very first page, he had a bunch of little thumbnail sketches, just ideas he didn't think were good enough to give a whole page draft to. And tucked into the corner, almost like an apology, is this little triangular structure. Immediately, that was the time machine. There was no debate. There was no back and forth. It was that. Picked that out. He and I went back and revised it back and forth a few times. And that was the time machine. And he nearly killed himself getting the thing built in time for the short. And I remember calling him a year later and being like, hey, remember that prop that you nearly died building? I need you to do it a second time for the feature.
Oh, so it was used in both the short and the feature.
But had to be rebuilt from scratch.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
How long did it take to build both times?
The first time it was 3 weeks. The second time it was 6 weeks. And it was a much, much better one because we'd all had a trial run with the short. That was one of the great joys of this film was we were so true to the short, just expanding out from it, that a lot of the stuff that we knew we had to do, we'd already had a chance to test. So even Vincent knew what he didn't like or did like on the internal support structures of the time machine. So he was able to make it much sturdier. He was able to make much better detailing work. We were able to work out the electronics inside of it for the built-in lights. All of that was just cleaner because we'd had the advantage of the trial run of the short film.
In the editing room, how much changed or developed when it came to the storytelling with that?
Very little. We had fantastic editor Jason McKee, who also runs Mode Effects, who did the effects on the film. There was never a project. I don't edit projects with the intention of trying to fix them later. To me, the project is what it is, but you want to let your editor have a lot of creative freedom. So the closest Jason would get to making changes, he would cut certain lines that didn't work, and he would do this without my supervision. Like the general rule of thumb we had is if I don't notice the change, then it's a good change. Because if he's changing in such a way that the guy who wrote and directed it doesn't pick up on it, then that means he's just making it stronger. And having this second pair of eyes always improves a film.
From the short to the feature, obviously the character development is something that was added in. What were other things that you changed or added in from the short to the feature?
The biggest change is it stopped being a one-man show. In the short film, it is a cast of one. It is Tim Travers and his time travel doppelgangers. And we kept the DNA of that into the feature, but all of the supporting cast is original to the feature film. So my character, the assassin who's out to get him, and a nice little nod to the Libyans in Back to the Future. Danny Trejo's character as the guy I work for. Felicia Day and Joel McHale as these radio producers. All of this was fleshed out from there. In fact, the only other human you ever see in the original short who wasn't Sam is the bartender who does not speak in the short film. And even we expanded out a little bit.
Yeah. Each of these characters, how much of them were added in for their own development versus just kind of Tim Travers being able to interact and kind of have his own development with each of the variants?
Well, Tim is the seed for all of them. So all of them are meant to react to Tim in a different way for his character growth. And that's just how writing works. Although I am firmly of the opinion that regardless of the cause of something, every character should be fleshed into their own person. But they do all start from the seed of what does our character Tim Travers need. Joel McHale's character is someone Tim can make look stupid. He is someone for Tim to lecture. He is someone for Tim to constantly be showing off his intellect to. Trejo is a character who's meant to intimidate Tim and put him in his place. I can't tell you the purpose of Keith David's character because that's a massive plot spoiler. My character is another character to be confused by Tim. These are all characters who make Tim more impressive and smarter, with the exception of Felicia Day, who's there to put him in his place. She is there to be someone who is completely and powerfully unimpressed by him in every conceivable regard. She humbles him in that regard. As a result, she's probably my favorite of the supporting characters. And I do think the Delilah character is the one I could most easily give a spinoff to, because I think she is the strongest supporting character. But once you create that need in the narrative, you do need to let them become their own people. I love the idea of originally Boone Ratty, that's Joel McHale's character, was conceived as an Alex Jones type. And once I got more and more into the writing, I liked the fact that he wasn't an Alex Jones so much as an Alex Jones wannabe. Everything about his little radio station, without getting into dialogue, is meant to look kind of pathetic.
And it's funny because, most of Joel McHale's characters are making other people, like in Community, other people look stupid or kind of talking down to them. But then you have him in a role where like Tim Travers is making him look ridiculous. Yeah.
That's actually one of my things I like to do casting wise, particularly if you're going to work with known talent. I like to cast against type, and where you can get a lot of humor and a lot of mileage, especially if you're working with a known talent or a celebrity, is assuming the audience has an expectation about what that character is going to be, and then undermining that expectation. That is set up, that is done for you just through the cultural zeitgeist and people's familiarity. In the case of Felicia, her character, part of my French, is a massive bitch. That's part of what I love about her character. But when we think of Felicia Day characters, we think of someone who's very sweet, nerdy, cute, often the innocent who other people are kind of walking all over. And letting her go against type is really fun. And also, Felicia is really good at it. Would you let her? She is great in that role and just great in that kind of role.
And it's interesting to see her in that because of seeing her in so many other things with that kind of sweet kind of naivety, but seeing her in that strong character again, just like Joel McHale, it gives a bigger impact because it goes against that kind of typecast. And likewise, I mean, the same Danny Trejo.
Yeah, same with Danny and Keith, although I really can't get into how they undermine their perceptions without making some pretty big spoilers. See the movie!
See the movie. And of course, with Felicia's character needing kind of that in order to go up against a personality like Tim Travers. Yeah, if it was any weaker of a character, you wouldn't have that dynamic.
I don't even think someone like Delilah sees herself as going against Tim Travers. I think she is just so far above him and basically everybody else around her in the narrative that it does not even enter her mind as a conflict or a battle of wills. It's one of those, it is a fight that Tim Travers thinks he is having. She is unaware that there's a fight at all. She's just too far above it.
With people, again, needing to see this movie, what are you hoping people take away from this adventure?
First and foremost, I want people to have a great time. I think it's great to have deep, profound ideas, but life is short. First and foremost, people need to have fun. This is a funny movie, so I hope people really just have a fun time watching it. But my deeper hope is that beyond having that fun time, that maybe this speaks to certain people and certain people like me who need the message that this film conveys at times. So my hope is that they come for the laughs, stay for the tears.
With a character like Tim Travers, obviously we can't really talk about where things go at the end, but how would you describe Tim's starting point in this movie?
Nihilism. This is a man who wants to understand literally anything but himself.
All the crazy things that happen in the movie, with a character like starting with Tim with the nihilism, how much of that was vital to his different various growths? All of it.
All of it. We see redemption stories about people becoming better folks all the time. You don't see stories about someone who may not be able to get better, but learning to accept themselves as they are. This story is very much about Tim learning to meet himself where he is. And courtesy of having multiple Tims, I can take that quite literally.
Thank you so much for talking to us. I really appreciate your time, and I wish you all the success that you may have.
Thank you so much, Nick. This has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you guys for including me on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.